So May asked me to talk a little bit about popular education in the context of SCC, the institution of SCC, the organization. And so I just wanted to start off by thinking about popular education as sort of in two ways. One is philosophically and one is methodologically. So in terms of our philosophy, at least I have been an organizer for my life until I've been a deputy director, and coming from an organizing perspective, picking up on what has already been said today, it's very much about bringing people together to identify the change that needs to happen and figuring out a way to solve it. It's about understanding the problem and starting to understand the solutions, and understanding that everybody who's involved is going to help us get to that, to bringing the puzzle pieces together with their own specific pieces of knowledge and expertise and their willingness to learn. But B, it's then having the power as a group of people to make the change. So it's not just the participation and collective learning, it's also then using that to be part of a decision-making process so that we see actual change. Methodologically speaking, you have to be really intentional about how do you draw that out from people. Because so often people come to the page thinking that the answers lie without and not within. So there are a lot of things that we have to be very intentional about as practitioners to make people understand their own agency and both how to encourage learning and teaching among each other, but also what are things that are going to turn them on and spark people so that they feel really engaged and they have a sense of ownership of the solutions that we're going for. So organizationally, there are lots of ways to do this. Certainly throughout our meetings and our workshops, we're very, very intentional about having active participation and thinking about all of our activities and exercises as something that is very, very interactive. But it's also part of the everyday work of leadership development. So we know that we are only going to be successful if we've got active members who are in charge of leading us forward in our campaigns. It's not going to come from staff. It's going to come from the people who are involved. So it's not just how do we design a workshop, it's about the everyday interaction we have with our members. You know, constantly members will come and they'll come to our organizers, for example, and say, okay, well, what should I do? But and our organizers turn that around. No, you tell us what to do. It's you need to take charge here. And then how do peers it's not just, again, about staff, but how do peers work together to teach each other and to make the change happen that they've identified. Institutionally, there are some broader challenges because Somerville Community Corporation is a multifaceted organization. So in addition to organizing, we do development, for example, and we deliver a lot of programs. Like we teach classes on financial literacy, and we have a jobs program. We all have the same idea of what we're trying to do as an organization, but how we approach it is very different. So through our development work, for example, where we're building properties, the more we as organizers can do to try to have popular education approaches to getting the community members involved and thinking about how to develop, you know, a property on North Street, for example. How can residents participate so we're not just coming in with all the answers? That's work that we need to do as an organization so that we have a very effective community planning process where it's not just giving feedback, but it's influencing specific decisions that happen in our work. You know, when we teach the financial literacy classes, the philosophy there is that the people who are in the classes come with so much knowledge already, so we already flip it. It's not like there's the teacher in front of the room saying, I'm going to deliver you this information. The starting point is peer-to-peer, you already have so much information, how do we share it? So that's a first step. But honestly, it's not always that easy. In workforce development, there are a lot of, there's just a lot of institutional history that goes way beyond our own organization about how you do workforce development. It's very much about like this concrete objective to get people into a job. And turning that around so people don't feel like they're there just to get one service to help them as an individual, but that they are part of this bigger system and trying to solve this bigger problem or set of problems is a flip. It's definitely a different kind of perspective of how to get people engaged. And yet, we do believe that people are much more likely to be both successful as individuals and that societally we're able to have much more impact if we do make that flip and people feel connected to the bigger system and that they're connected to each other. So that's very important, and it's this point of it's not clear cut, like it's an evolution to try to rethink how we do things and how, especially when people come from institutions where something has happened, you know, for decades. How do you switch that? How do you intentionally change the very way you're delivering this service? So it's not just we are delivering something for you, but we're all in this together and we're going to help each other get to that point of everybody has better jobs and we're holding institutions accountable. Some of the challenges we face, it takes a lot of time for people to go through the steps of, like, let's say you're doing property development, of understanding all the steps and getting involved. Or it takes more time. If someone needs a job, they have to put food on the table for their family, and it takes more time to have them get involved, be part of our leadership development process, or take the time to do these workshops where you're challenging the systems. That takes more time. And it takes money because there's capacity. So organizationally, it's a real decision, just like the University of Tufts. It's the same thing with organizations. We only have so much capacity to do this. And yet the work is so important. And then we're up against, again, the institutional history of the world around us that sort of expects us to do things a certain way that's efficient, and not necessarily thinking about the intricacies of really pulling that apart. And also people who come to our organization, sometimes they just want a specific service. They are also coming from the same institutions that we're all coming from, and they might not be used to being asked to actually be part of the conversation or be part of the peer networks or be part of making the systemic changes that we're trying to make. And I think one of the values of this Teaching Democracy pilot has been to think about the work, not just instinctively how we're used to doing our organizing, but how do we make sure it penetrates across our other departments. And we were fortunate to have a few people in our program areas from SDC participate in the pilot. And I think for them it was really valuable to, one, bring up the question, and two, think about specific methods for how to bring that into the classroom. So it's not just reliant on, say, the organizers who, that's how we think about the world. We think about popular education and organizing are kind of the same thing, right? That's just how we do our work. But I think it's very helpful to figure out, not just leave it to those organizers who are trained, but to think about how can everybody take on these methods so that we're sharing an approach that transcends the whole
My name is Ronaldo Castello. I'm a community engagement specialist for MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. We are the regional planning agency for Greater Boston, serving the people who live and work in the 101 cities and towns in the Greater Boston area. I'm originally from Ecuador. I have a background in community organizing and communications. And the way I want to provide a little bit of context on how we've incorporated some of the popular education practices in the work we do at MAPC, particularly we as the Community Engagement Division. Our role is to provide support and guide the planners with community engagement strategies. So we have projects in different cities and towns and related to different topics like transportation, housing, public health, clean energy. So the idea is that we provide that support, providing basically strategies for reaching out to the community, and also how to do the meeting design, how to make sure that we have meaningful participation of the people who come to these meetings. But we try to focus on, what are some of the goals of the project and also what are the needs of the community. And with that mindset, we go in and talk to the planners and guide them throughout that process. I think over the past 5 years, we've had we have significantly shifted the culture within the agency to see community engagement with different eyes. As an approach to get that meaningful participation from people, particularly from communities that are underserved groups. Those are that's the focus of our work most of the time. And we try to do this more and more by creating interactive spaces where participants can have meaningful discussion, interact with materials and propose solutions to the challenges that we are facing in in the community and with a specific project. After the Teaching Democracy workshop, I brought some of this information back to the agency, and I had two informal discussions with planners. We had the director of land use, we had a few of the land use planners in the room, and I was introducing this idea of let's start with the experience of the residents and people who come to the meeting first, rather than us as outsiders telling them what's wrong or what should happen with their communities. And one of the planners in particular, he's new, he has been with us for about 6 months. He was very excited about this idea, and he had a meeting happening in Medford for a Medford Square master plan. And he asked for our support, and we together came up with an agenda that instead of the traditional presentation and Q&A, we had, the first section was about exploring. Basically, people come in, they sign up, and then we have different boards around the table with different questions, like what's your favorite thing about Medford Square? What was the destination of your last visit to Medford Square? How frequently do you visit Medford Square? And what's missing from the area? And this basically gives people the chance to interact with materials, provide their opinions before even the meeting starts, and start creating connections with others as they walk through the room. So I call this part the exploring part. See the materials, connect with people. And then we do some of the sharing. So what happened after, we officially started the meeting, and we had people from the city, and then the MAPC planner came in and provided some context on what was being done, what was the thinking behind the meeting. Some of the geography and some of the topics of the study. He took 5 minutes to do this, so he didn't deliver the presentation at that point. And after he gave some context, he turned it back to the people. So I said, you know, you have people around you, talk to someone next to you, introduce yourself, and talk about the issues in Medford Square, what are the opportunities, and you know, facilitate a conversation among the people in the room. And after that, the idea was for people to report back as like popcorn style. So what are some of the themes that came out of this discussion? So that was informing also the planner about some of the relevant issues happening in the area. And while doing this, we had some power scribers. People were like taking notes, and to make sure we didn't miss this valuable information, in the back of the agenda we had a space for people to draft their vision and some notes about the conversations they just had. So after this initial experience of really getting out how residents of Medford experience the square, then we came with a presentation. So this presentation did take 35 to 40 minutes, and we provided general information. What the planner did, and he was very excited when he was telling me this, is that he started connecting what people had said in the initial part with what he was sharing. This was the first meeting of the process, so it's basically just collecting information. But as he was presenting, you know, demographic information and market changes and things like that, he was already making connections with what people had shared, which he found very valuable. He told me that the room was alive, like the room, people were in a very good mood. There was not a lot of contention. And after that, we had an open house feedback and discussion that lasted about 20 minutes. You know, what's missing? We had more, the people went back to the stations, made their own notes, and I think that was a profound shift that I think we're hoping to keep on doing with planners in the agency to make sure that the people who live there are the ones who know what's wrong and what's working. So our goal for the planner to help facilitate these interactions and to use knowledge to create the space where these conversations can happen, and to provide context for the project and supplement what people have shared with more technical elements, and building off of people's comments and off of people's information, and to start from the experience of the participants. So that's where we wanna go, and obviously it's a large agency, and you know, we're trying project by project to start shifting the culture around how we engage with communities, particularly the ones who haven't been part of these processes in the past.